Hey programmers, Alvin here. Right now let's go over LeetCode number 104, the maximum depth of binary tree problem. So in this problem, we're going to take in a binary tree as input. And what we want to do is find the maximum depth of this binary tree. So what is depth? Well, let's say we considered some node. Let's say I look at this D node over here. We can say that it has a depth of 3. Depth would just be the number of nodes that it takes to get to that node. Depth is just how far this node is from the root. So if we start counting the nodes at the root, we have 1, 2, 3. That's why D has a depth of 3. Let's consider another node over here, like this G node. Like you expect, this one will have a depth of 4. This is actually the max depth of the tree, so you actually would want to return 4 in this case. You want to return the number 4. Notice that there might be multiple nodes that have the maximal depth, right? The G and the H both have a depth of 4. An important thing I want to note in this problem is when you count the depth, they tell us that we need to count the number of nodes, right? So the number of nodes starting at the root is 4 in this case. If you count the edges, in other words, the arrows here, you would count 3, right? So that would be incorrect. You want to count the nodes. All right, so let's come up with a strategy for this one. So there are a few ways you can solve this one. Overall, what you want to do is traverse through this binary tree and track the distance that you're traveled. And you can do this using either a depth-first solution or a breadth-first solution. They both end up being about the same amount of code, and they're going to have pretty similar complexities. I'm going to show you both. Let's start with the breadth-first solution. And in this actual whiteboard, I'll implement it iteratively. All right, so to attack this using a breadth-first solution, you want to set up your queue data structure. Recall that your queue is your kind of linear data structure where you have a back as well as a front. And the way things work is you add items to the back and they leave through the front. So the direction of traffic here in my queue is like this. So I'm going to start at my root node A. And what I want to do is I want to add an entry onto my queue to represent this initial node. So it's going to look like this, right? So in blue, A just represents my actual reference to the node. And the purple one represents how many nodes I've traveled thus far. Because this is just my very first root node, it's going to have a depth of 1. So I add this item onto my queue, and now I run my main algorithm. So what I do is I remove the front item of my queue, and I consider it. In the long run, what we want to do in this problem is return the max depth. So over time, you should also track an additional variable to represent the max depth you've seen thus far. Because I only have my initial node of A, and it had a depth of 1, my max depth is just 1 right now. All right, so I'm considering this A node. What I want to do is now consider its children. So I need to add an entry for its left child. That would be the B node. Notice that B has a depth of 2. And how did I get that? Well, I just took its parent's depth and just added 1 to it, right? That's why I got the 2. So I'm going to go ahead and add that into my queue. I need to also add A's other child. I need to add an entry for the C node, right? So I have C. C's also going to have a depth of 2 because again, I just added 1 to the parent's depth. Great. Notice how I add that C to the back of my queue. At this point, I run another iteration of my algorithm. So I remove the front of my queue. We call that dequeuing. And if I look at the item that I just dequeued, you'll see that it has a depth of 2, which is actually bigger than the max depth I've seen thus far. So at this point, I think I should update my max depth. Now the max I've seen is actually 2. What I want to do now is consider B's children. So I had an entry for the left child D. Notice that D has a depth of 3, again, just adding 1 from the B's 2. And I also add the right child, which is the E. Be sure to add it to the back of the queue. We call that enqueuing. At this point, I'm done with that B node. So I dequeue from the front. Now I'm considering this C node. This depth is not larger than my max, so I don't need to update my max. However, I should still look at the children here. So I want to add an entry for the F node. I continue my algorithm. At this point, I dequeue the D node. I see that it actually has a depth of 3, which is bigger than my max. So I update it. Now my max is 3. You're probably getting a hang of the logic here. Whenever you remove an item from your queue, that kind of represents the fact that you're looking at some path that started at the root and ended at that node that you just removed from your queue. In other words, because I just removed D from my queue, it's as if I'm considering this path over here. Starts at the root A and ends at the D node. And notice that it does indeed have a depth of 3. The D node actually has no children, so I don't need to enqueue anything into my queue. So when I keep running, I now remove the front of my queue. That gives me the E node. I see that the depth of 3 is not bigger than my max depth, so I need to just go ahead and consider the children. Add an entry for the G node, and I add an entry for the H node. Something you might notice is I'm not actually going to consider the depth of the children right now and compare that to my max depth. In other words, I'm not going to preemptively look at the 4 in the H and the 4 in the G and compare that to my max depth. When you actually end up coding this up, it is going to be a little repetitive if you do that logic in the children. Instead, I think it's much better to just consider the depth when they're removed from the queue, because that's actually going to happen once in the space of the code. You'll see what that means when I actually implement this in code. So when I continue my algorithm here, I go ahead and just remove the front of my queue, looking at the F node here. It doesn't get any bigger than my max depth, so I don't need to do anything further from here. At this point, finally, I remove my G node, and I can see that it has a new max depth, right? It has a depth of 4, so I replace my max depth. G has no children, so I'm done with the G node. I dequeue the H. Its 4 is not bigger than my max depth, and there are no children to add further, so now I'm done with my algorithm. I stop iterating my algorithm once my queue is empty. At this point, I would just return the max depth that I found, which is indeed 4. When it comes to the time and space complexity of this code, you will want to know that if you use an efficient queue implementation, like in your built-in language, it does have an O of 1 time for both your enqueue and dequeue operations. In other words, you have constant time operations for adding and removing from your queue. When it comes to the total complexity here, if we say that n is the number of nodes, time complexity is just going to be O of n. And that's because each node is going to be added to the queue once and also removed from the queue once, and there are n different nodes. Space complexity here is also going to be O of n coming from the queue that we create, right? We're going to have a bunch of different items on the queue. In the worst case, it's going to be O of n. All right, let's code it up. All right, so let's start with the breadth first solution here. And so I'm going to start by bringing in my queue implementation in Python. So we can do from collections, import deck. It's really important that we utilize a queue implementation that is efficient, right? And I happen to know that if we're using the deck in Python, it has a constant time for adding an item into our queue, also constant time for removing an item from our queue. So let me go ahead and set up that queue like so. And how am I going to initialize it? Well, what I want to do is, of course, put my root node. And I also want to tag it with also the depth that I found it at. Because it's the root node, it's just going to have an initial depth of 1. It's going to be my starting point. Cool. And now from here, I'm going to iterate. I'm going to iterate while my queue is not empty. In Python, I can just say while queue. And when I run my general algorithm, I'm going to say is queue.popleft. This would remove the front of my queue, right? I'm going to save the value I get back. I'm going to unpack it. That'll give me a node. And also the depth that I found it at, I'll just say D for short. Cool. Now from here, in a general breadth first traversal, you just want to consider the children. So if this node has a left, so this is classic code. So if node.left is not none, if the node has a left, go ahead and add that left child. You can do that by saying queue.append. And be sure to append a tuple, right? I want to put the actual node reference, but I also want to put the depth that it exists at. I know that if my parent node, let's say, has a depth of 3, a child node of that would have a depth of 4, right? Your children are going to have always a depth that is 1 greater than yours. So I could just do D plus 1 here. And just a metric for the right-hand child. And so far, this is just a classic breadth first traversal. Let me go ahead and add in some logic to actually track the maximal depth I've seen. So I'll create like a max, let's say max D variable here. I'll do it like this. And I'm going to initialize it to 1, right? Kind of corresponding to the fact that if I have an actual tree, the root is going to automatically have a depth of 1. But the important thing to do is actually to replace things here if I find something larger. And I like to do that over here. So when something leaves the queue, that's generally where I like to process it. And I'll show you why in a little bit. So here's where I'll do my max value logic. I'll check if D is bigger than max D, then I'll replace it. So max D equals D. Great, max value logic. And so I think it's more clean to do your max value logic right after the node is popped from the queue rather than when the node enters the queue. In other words, some people might write things like this. They might say, okay, now that I've looked at the children, I have a child with depth D plus 1, maybe if D plus 1 is bigger than max D, then, do that replacement logic. But the issue I take with that is you're going to have to duplicate that logic for also the right-hand child, right? Which ends up being not as clean. Because you're always guaranteed that anything that enters the queue is going to eventually leave the queue, I think you might as well just do it over here when it leaves. That way you only have to do it once. All right, and with that, this should update our max depth over time. When you're done traversing through your tree, so after the while loop, just return whatever max depth that you found. Let's go ahead and submit this. We do have to fix an issue. We do have to handle the case where maybe our input tree is empty. In other words, if our input root is none, that'd be symbolized by this. You can just handle that with a separate if statement. If our root is none, we'll go ahead and return 0. We're kind of insinuating that if we have an empty tree, its max depth is 0. Let's go ahead and try that. And there we have it. So it goes without saying, I just showed you how to implement the breadth first iterative version of this. Solving this depth first iterative is almost identical. You're really just changing your queue to a stack. So maybe you want to see that. Super easy to do. Just going to copy things over down here. So for your iterative depth first flavor, don't use your queue. I'm going to rename that to stack. And so I'm not going to use the deck from collections here. So I'm just going to use a regular list. I'll adjust my method calls here. So instead of pop left, I'm just going to pop. That'll move the last element of a list here. I also want to be sure to add to the last position of the list as well. So I'm using basically a list as my stack. I'm going to remove things from the end of the list. I'm also going to add things to the end of the list, giving me that stack order. And with that, that'll just be your iterative depth first solution. All right, now that you've seen the iterative solution, let me show you the recursive version. If you choose to solve this problem recursively, it will end up being a depth first solution. Let me just go over how that logic would work high level. So what I want to do is now give you an overview of how the return values in your recursion, or how the base cases in your recursion, are going to work. What I also want to do is show you how you could solve your higher level solutions using your sub solutions. So what I want to do is start by considering kind of like the base cases here. In this case, that would be these leaf nodes, like this D node over here. Whenever we make a recursive call and we end up at a leaf node, we want to have it return 1. That'll give us a nice starting point that we can use to count the depth further up. So what I'm saying is all of these leaf nodes should return 1. So let's consider some node here, like the E, right? How can this E node calculate its solution using the child solutions? Well, its left child has a solution of 1, and its right child also has a solution of 1. What you want to do here is generally just choose the bigger of your two children and then add 1 to it. Here, my two children are the same, so I'm just going to choose one of the ones, and I need to add an additional 1 on top of it. So now the solution for E is actually 2. Here's where things get interesting. Now let's say I'm at this B node, right? This B node now needs to figure out its solution from its child solutions. As a left subsolution of 1, and it has a right subsolution of 2. Because when you calculate your depth, you want to find the max depth. What you want to do is choose the larger subresult. So you are going to choose the 2 here. And then you need to add an additional 1 to count this node of B. So now you have a 3. And to kind of think about what we're doing, because I'm saying that the subresult at this B node is 3, if I look at this subtree that is rooted in B, so pretend that this purple tree I have highlighted right now, let's say that it was its own tree. 3 would actually be the maximal depth in this purple tree. That's how we're using these subsolutions to calculate our higher level solutions. Let's do something similar for this C node. So we know that this C node is kind of a really important case because it's asymmetric, right? And it's really important that when you go through your binary tree algorithms, you consider these asymmetrical cases, right? When you have either like no children or maybe just one child. So we know it has a right subsolution of 1. What about its left subsolution? Well, C has no left child. Its left child points to null. And so you want to make sure you have another base case to handle this. Whenever you have a null node, I think it would be useful to have that return 0. Kind of logically what we're implying here is that if you have like an empty tree or like a null tree, its max depth is 0. So now at the C node, I need to consider these two subsolutions. What I want to do is choose the larger value here. Obviously 1 is a larger value, so I take that. But I need to increment it by an additional 1 to count the C node. So C's subsolution is actually 2. Now finally at my root node, I consider my two subresults. I choose the bigger between them. I choose the 3. And then of course I add an additional 1 to it, giving me 4. And that would be my top level answer. And that would actually correspond to the maximal depth in my tree. Of course, I'll show you how to code this up. It actually is a very brief code. we say that n is the number of nodes here, the time complexity is going to be O of n, because we're just making a recursive call for every node of the tree. Really only one call for each node. Space complexity here is going to be O of n as well, coming from the fact that we have to use the recursive call stack. Let's look at the code. So to get started here on the depth first recursive solution, I'm going to start with my base case. So I'm going to go ahead and check if my root is none. Generally, when you're working on your binary tree algorithms that are recursive, you will need an explicit base case that handles if your root is none. So what should I return here? Well, I'm going to return 0. So why am I returning 0 here? Well, when you write recursive code, what you should do is treat your base cases as if they're their own inputs. In other words, think of it as if someone asked you, okay, here's an empty tree, right? Because the root is none. Here's an empty tree. What's the max depth in that empty tree, right? And I would say something like -1 or maybe even 0. In this case, you do want 0 based on like the test cases here, right? If you return -1, it's actually not going to pass in the same way. So I'll return 0. 0 is also a great choice because overall, I'm going to eventually take like a lot of max value logic. 0 is a small value, so it's never going to be chosen when I actually choose the maximum for like a valid tree. And so from here, I'm going to start forming my recursive calls. So I know I'm going to call my left child, so root.left. And I'm also going to do that for my right child. And the question we always have to ask ourselves whenever we implement recursive code is, when I have multiple calls like this, how am I going to combine the results from those calls, right? We know that we're getting an integer back from both of these calls, right? It'll be the max depth in the left subtree, and I'll also get back the max depth in the right subtree. What I want to do is I want to choose the bigger value between the two. So this evaluates to a number. This also evaluates to a number. Just choose the max between them, right? You could say max of these two things. Cool. And what you want to do is just add 1 to it, just like we said in our whiteboard. Just return that value. All right, and that's actually all you need for this code. Let's go ahead and submit it. And there we have it. Something that trips people up with like this kind of solution is they might feel like, oh, like how are we handling the case where we have a leaf node, right? Why does this already pass if I just have like a base case for if the root is none? Well, just think about a very simple case. Let's say we just had a tree consisting of a single node. We'll call it A. Right? And so we know that in this small tree, A is the root. It also happens to be a leaf, right? It's still a leaf because it has no children, because this tree only has a single node, right? So how does this code work, even if I have just one node of A? So when we evaluate this code, we're going to check, is my root none? It's not, because it's an actual node, right? It contains the value A. So I roll into this line over here. I know I need to evaluate my recursive call, so I call max depth on root.left, and recall, because A is actually a leaf node, both its left and right are null, right? I'll just put null like that to symbolize it. And so when I evaluate max depth of root.left, I already know what it's going to come back as, right? It's going to evaluate my function call, but in that frame of reference where root is literally none, it's going to return 0, right? So A is going to get back a 0 for its left call. It's also going to get back a 0 for its right call. Now I just choose the max between 0 and 0, which is just 0, and I do 1 plus 0. Ultimately, that means that when I make a call upon A, it's going to return 1. That's going to give you your nice logic that handles your leaf nodes. So that's how this code works. All right, so I hope you found this walkthrough useful. If you want to learn more data structures and algorithms with me, then consider hitting subscribe.